Man, this seems like a big step up for Galal. What's good? It's Woog. We've got Sonny Edwards, 21 wins and 1 loss, taking on Galal Yafai, 8 wins and 0 losses. This fight is basically Brit versus Brit, more specifically English versus English. Sonny Edwards is from London, Galal Yafai is from Birmingham, and this fight is taking place in Birmingham. And this is for the interim WBC Flyweight title. So these guys are 112 pounds. The full WBC champion in this division is Kenshiro Taraji. So conceivably, the winner of Edwards versus Yafai, if everything works out, should be fighting for the full title against Taraji. And really, Taraji is really the only other name in the division that can probably attract a good amount of viewers. And if they were to fight Taraji, I would imagine that that fight would take place in Japan. When you get this low, division-wise, weight-wise, it's really a much more narrow audience. Like even among boxing fans, you talk to like casual to pretty solid boxing fans, and then you start talking anywhere below 122, they're gonna be scratching your head. And if you're not talking about Naoya Inoue, who's now 122, or Bam Rodriguez, they're not gonna know what you're talking about. And speaking of Bam Rodriguez, Sonny Edwards picked up his only career loss 2 fights ago against Bam Rodriguez. And going into that fight, the odds were pretty narrow. Like a lot of people thought that Sonny Edwards might give Bam a lot of problems, but as the fight played out, Bam ended up putting a beating on Sonny, especially by the 4th and 5th rounds, and Bam Rodriguez stopped Sonny Edwards in the 9th round. He dropped him multiple times. It turned out to be a pretty nasty beating. He broke Sonny down, and Sonny's had 1 fight since against Adrian Curiel, and Sonny was winning that fight and ultimately did win that fight, but it ended up being a technical decision because the fight was stopped due to a nasty vertical cut on Sonny Edwards' head caused by a clash of heads. So Sonny was doing pretty well in that fight. It was still a pretty bad experience overall. I mean, because he did fight through the cut, but he was bleeding a lot and it was really a bad cut. So, I mean, I'm kind of thinking this is 2 unfortunate experiences in a row. One was a stoppage loss and the other was a win, but again, he absorbed that nasty cut. So maybe Sonny Edwards has rebuilt some confidence, but I don't know, like you would have much rather have had that win take place due to Sonny's hands rather than a cut on Sonny's head. And now he's going to be fighting Galal Yafai, who's been, I mean, can you call the guy a prospect contender if he's 31 years old? Like the guy's only got 8 professional fights, but that's because he got a late start to his pro career. He was an Olympian in the Olympics that took place in Tokyo, and he actually won gold. So he's an Olympic gold medalist, but again, he was a little bit older when he turned pro. So he's only had a handful of fights, and even the competition that he's fought, it hasn't been, you know, it's been decent to pretty good fighters, but not much in the way when you look at, you know, Sonny Edwards' 2 best opponents. Bam Rodriguez, obviously, he's one of the 10 best pound for pound fighters in the sport, but also Felix Alvarado. That's another really good fighter that Sonny Edwards has fought, and he beat him via very close but unanimous decision. We're talking like 115, 113 types of scorecards against Felix Alvarado. But I think that Alvarado is better than anybody Galal Yafai has fought. So Yafai is the younger brother of Galal Yafai, who I believe is like kind of half retired now. He last fought in like November 2023, got knocked out in the 1st round. So I think Galal Yafai is nearly done, but Galal Yafai, his name has been buzzing a bit, and he's been fighting on a lot of matchroom undercards. He's been looking pretty good, but again, against lesser competition. And even against that lesser competition, he did run into some issues against Agustin Gauto, where Yafai took a lot of shots. Like as he was so tenacious about pouring on his offense, sometimes he kind of lacks in the defensive department. So, you know, if it was going to be against like a Bam Rodriguez or something, I would think Bam pretty much destroys Yafai, because Yafai is there to get hit as he's trying to pour on the offense. But he's not going to be fighting Bam Rodriguez. He's going to be fighting Sonny Edwards. And the way that I see this one playing out and some of the things that come to mind matchup and style wise is that I look at Sonny Edwards as having better feet than Yafai, but Yafai's got the punching power, and Yafai has like a 7-inch reach advantage. We're talking like a 67, 68-inch reach versus a 60-inch reach. So by comparison, Bam Rodriguez, who has now moved up a division, and by the way, give some props to Bam. Like out of those 4 kings in and around his weight classes that he's operating in, he has weight hopped a bit, but I mean, he has now fought 3 out of the 4. He stopped Carlos Cuadras, he stopped Sarisa Cat Rungvisai. He stopped Juan Francisco Estrada. And now they're talking about having him fight the fourth of those 4 elite fighters in that division in that era, Chocolatito. If I'm Chocolatito, I'm taking heed to Jay-Z's advice. Don't be the next contestant on that Summer Jam screen. If I'm Chocolatito, I'm like, I might pass on that one. Like, I know it's going to be a good payday for Chocolatito, but I mean, I'd imagine the odds would be pretty wide at this point of their respective careers for Bam Rodriguez. So yeah, he's been like just cleaning out a lot of top fighters. And I mean, even against the young and hungry fighters, he's been cleaning them up as well, including Sonny Edwards. But with Edwards versus Yafai, Yafai has a 68-inch reach, 1 inch longer of a reach than Bam Rodriguez. So Sonny Edwards is gonna have to put his feet to work. And I do think that Edwards is the better pure boxer, but here's where the question lies. If Sonny Edwards is able to outbox Yafai in spots, is there going to be a point in this fight where Yafai, maybe through a determined body attack, can he start to slow Sonny Edwards down to where there's a turn in the fight and now Sonny Edwards is basically trying to tie up, trying to move around, trying to jump in and ambush and then bounce back out? Because I imagine Yafai is going to be applying the pressure and he's looking to line his opponents up with that long left hand. Sonny Edwards is orthodox, but he can switch. But Yafai is going to be looking to tag Sonny with the left hand, but I'd imagine he's going to be doing some nice work to the body to try to slow those feet of Sonny Edwards down. The question is, does Sonny Edwards win the early rounds? Keep in mind, this is a 12-rounder since it's like an interim title fight. Does Sonny Edwards win the early rounds? And if he starts, pulling away on the scorecard a bit, when does that turn around? And when it turns around, how dramatically does it turn around? Does it turn around to where they start trading rounds? Or does it turn around where there's no looking back once Yafai starts to take over with that applied pressure? And it's interesting that we're looking at what Sonny Edwards' durability is going to be looking like. And it's largely because of those last 2 fights that he had, where again, he got stopped, but it was a pretty bad beating. Because otherwise, you look at their pure age, Sonny Edwards is 3 years younger than Galal Yafai. I know Yafai he's got the reputation of being the up and comer, but Sonny Edwards, although he's a former belt holder of a major title, he's only 28 years old to Yafai's 31 years old. But this is still largely looked at as Yafai being the fresher fighter who's going to try to break down and test the durability of Sonny Edwards. But unfortunately for Yafai, I look at this as being a big step up in class for Yafai. Like, again, he's been fighting guys who are not quite the caliber of Edwards. So when Yafai is trying to find Edwards, I think Edwards, at least early, is going to be kind of boxing his ears off a bit. Like if Yafai's winning the early rounds, I'd be pretty surprised, but I do think that Yafai is going to end up slowing Edwards down and kind of force Edwards to fight him. So what happens at that point? Does he use his reach to start putting a beating on Sonny? Does Sonny start to take some heavy shots? And, let's use Teddy Atlas for an example. Does Sonny Edwards know how to respond when he goes back to that dark place, that chamber, the chamber of truth? Does Sonny Edwards start having PTSD if he starts taking a beating against Yafai? Or does he have the craft to be able to navigate the situation and to continue to conduct himself to win some rounds here and there and to do enough in the second half of the fight where the work that he put in the first half of the fight is enough to win on the scorecards? I kind of think this is going to be a photo finish, and I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the fight, if Yafai basically has Sonny Edwards kind of holding on a bit. Like if he really tags him with that left a few times, it won't take much for Edwards to start visibly showing the signs of that punishment. But I'm gonna lean on Sonny Edwards' craft here, and I'm gonna pick Sonny Edwards to win a very close 115-113-ish type decision, or maybe even if it was like a 116-112 type of fight, or even a 115-113, I think we could get a scorecard that looks like 114-113 if Yafai knocks Sonny Edwards down late and Sonny Edwards would have otherwise won a 115-113 decision, that could take a point away from Edwards to where it then becomes like a 114-113. But the point being, I think this is going to be a photo finish. This is pretty much, let's see what you got, Galal Yafai by time because again, he's, you know, only got a few fights, but he's 31. Now this is the big test against Sonny Edwards. I think he's going to come up just short, but I wouldn't be totally surprised if it went the other way. But either way, I don't think this fight is going to result in a stoppage. If Yafai stops Edwards, that would be pretty big, and that would be a huge boost to Galal Yafai's reputation, and that would add a lot of intrigue to Yafai versus Kenshiro Taraji. But I'm going to go with Sonny Edwards to edge a very close one. Again, I think it's going to be rough for him, especially in the second half of the fight. He's fighting a bigger puncher who might be the fresher fighter, who's got like a 8-inch reach advantage. But I'm still going to go with the craft in Sonny Edwards. I think that his feet are going to carry the early rounds. I think he's going to ultimately do enough to edge it on the scorecards. But yeah, let me know what your thoughts are on Sonny Edwards versus Galal Yafai. This one's kind of going under the radar, but again, I like these types of fights that could put some more spotlight on the lower divisions. In this case, the 112 flyweight division. But yeah, I'm going with Sonny Edwards to edge a very close decision. It's not going to come easy, but I think he's gonna have to dig deep. But I think that he's going to pull it off against the 31-year-old prospect contender. Let me know your thoughts on this one in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.